Qatar, a crucial actor in the EU's efforts to diversify its energy supplies, has issued a stern warning that it will cease selling natural gas to Europe if penalized under the EU's new sustainability due diligence rule. Is Europe prepared to freeze for its principles? It is midwinter in Europe. Frost is forming on windows, heaters are fighting to keep houses warm, and everyone is asking the same question: what went wrong? Now imagine this. Qatar, one of Europe's largest suppliers of liquefied natural gas, LNG, has just cut off the taps. This is more than simply a headline. It is a catastrophe. But why would Qatar do this? Let us find out. Qatar was nearly displacing Russian gas in the EU. However, Qatar has now threatened to stop gas supplies to the EU. This is not simply a gas tale. It's about power, pride, and a conflict of ideologies. So what's happening here? Let's start with why Qatar is so upset. Europe has established a new guideline, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. And this is not simply a courteous suggestion, there's a demand. It states, if you want to do business with us, you should make sure your supply chains are clean. There is no forced labor, no environmental damage, and no funny business. Sounds noble, right? But here's the deal. Qatar see it as Europe poking its nose where it does not belong. For Qatar, this is about more than simply commerce. It is about sovereignty. Think about it. If someone told you how to manage your business, home, or country, you'd probably be offended. And this is precisely how Qatar feels. They ask, who is Europe to tell us how to operate? We've been operating things quite fine without their consent. Now, let's discuss statistics, since this isn't all about injured egos. If Qatar does not comply with Europe's directive, it risks losing access to one of its largest markets. That may cost $2.5 billion in revenue. Sure, Qatar has huge pockets, but no one enjoys losing billions. But this is where things become interesting. For Qatar, this is more than simply a financial concern. It is an issue of respect. They are concerned that if they cave in to Europe's demands, it would establish a precedent. What happens next? More rules, more control? Qatar isn't about to let it happen. They're arguing that if you don't like the way we do things, you may not deserve our gas. So why is this so important? To understand this, we need to go back in time and look at how Qatar rose to prominence in Europe's energy market. Here's the trouble with Qatar. They didn't merely fall into the spotlight, they deserved it. Decades ago, Qatar had one of the world's greatest natural gas reserves. Instead of simply selling it like everyone else, they took a more strategic approach. They invested in LNG, liquefied natural gas. Why? Because LNG is much simpler to move throughout the world, Qatar anticipated that flexibility would make them necessary. Fast forward to the 2000s, and Qatar was no longer merely a player in the energy industry. They were the kingpin. They created cutting-edge facilities, signed long-term contracts, and established themselves as the most dependable supplier on the globe. However, it wasn't until the Ukraine war that their significance to Europe was clearly realized. When Russia shut down its pipelines, Europe was left scrambling. And guess who came in to rescue the day? Qatar. By the end of 2022, they were contributing around 14% of Europe's LNG. That is not simply a number. It represents survival. Without Qatar, many European homes would have been dark and chilly last winter. However, Qatar's dominance is not just due to supply. It also stems from policy. They have signed contracts with major European energy corporations, including Shell and Total Energies. These are not casual agreements. These are multi-decade collaborations that will keep Qatar at the center of Europe's energy policy. Now, here's when things become complicated. Europe's reliance on Qatar has both advantages and disadvantages. On the one hand, Qatar is a dependable provider. On the other hand, Qatar's dependency affords it significant influence. So, if Qatar cuts off the water supply, what is Europe's backup plan? Before we go any further, tell us whether you're enjoying the video. If so, Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos about global development, power, and influence around the globe. Let us proceed immediately. Can Europe survive? Technically, sure. But it won't be pretty. Europe has alternative possibilities, such as the United States and Australia. But here's the issue. They're pricey, very costly. American LNG, for example, is extremely expensive to manufacture and transport. By the time it reaches Europe, the price has risen dramatically. What about Australian LNG, even farther away? This entails much larger prices. Then there is infrastructure. LNG does not just appear and perform like magic. It requires specific terminals to store, process, and distribute it. Europe has started building more of these facilities, but they are far from prepared to manage a full-fledged transition away from Qatar. What about renewables? Wind, solar, and hydroelectric are excellent, but they have not yet reached their full potential. You cannot power an entire continent with good intentions and a few wind turbines, particularly not in the midst of winter. Let's not forget the competition. Europe isn't the only one looking for LNG. China, Japan, and India are all in the market and eager to pay top cash. So even if Europe finds a new supply, they will have to battle tooth and claw to get adequate gas. Here is the bottom line. Europe can live without Qatar, but it will come at a significant cost. Higher costs, fewer supplies, and a slew of political issues. Meanwhile, Qatar has alternatives. Speaking of which, let us assess how solid Qatar's position is. Let us explain why Qatar is not bluffing. First and foremost, they are not dependent just on Europe. They've been shifting their focus to Asia for some years. China, India, and South Korea are all lined up for additional LNG. Qatar has already inked large deals with these countries, some of which stretch 20 years or more. So, if Europe decides to play tough, Qatar may simply divert its supplies. But that is not all. Qatar is also increasing its output. By 2027, they want to generate 142 million tons of LNG yearly. That's more than just satisfying demand, it's dominating the marketplace. Here's the kicker. They are investing in green LNG, making their production more environmentally friendly. That's a major issue for shoppers who desire sustainability without compromising dependability. Now let us discuss strategy. Qatar isn't simply sitting back and waiting for Europe to blink. They have used their energy supremacy as a geopolitical instrument for many years. Qatar understands how to leverage contracts and diversify its markets. So, can Qatar really walk away from Europe? Absolutely. But it's not just about gas. It is about something larger, a conflict of ideals. It's about two very different perspectives on the world. Europe wishes to lead with its ideals: human rights, sustainability, and fairness. Doesn't it sound great? But Qatar is all about pragmatism. They're saying we're here to sell gas, not to take a moral test. And to be honest, this type of confrontation is nothing new. Remember the US-China trade war? The same story. America tried to stand up for ethics, but in the end, they still needed Chinese goods. The fact is that values are difficult to preserve when they come with a high price tag. So, what will Europe do? Stick to its ideals or risk an energy crisis? Alternatively, make a deal and keep the gas flowing. That is the question. And the clock is ticking. So, here we are. Qatar has leverage. Europe has the rules. And winter is rapidly approaching. For Qatar, this is an opportunity to demonstrate that they cannot be pushed about. For Europe, it is a test of whether its principles can withstand the harsh realities of geopolitics. Whatever happens, one thing is certain. This isn't only about gas. It's about power, control, and the delicate balance between principles and practicality. So Europe, what will it be? Values or survival? We'd want to take a minute to thank you all for your comments and ideas. Your observations have always impressed us. Do you believe the EU merely wants to act like a boss? But can a nation accomplish it without actual control? Let us know in the comments section. Will the EU beg Qatar for gas? Would you want to see more videos like this one? If so, please like, share, and subscribe to get unique videos on global development and expanding global impact. Until the next video, stay tuned.